All right, what's going on? Hopefully, everybody's doing well. Hopefully, we had a good discussion on what happened the day before we read. So, Emma's just pretty much trying her best to get out of the prison, she calls it, that chair. The chair is actually going to become a character for a little while. It's going to develop a bit of a personality, might be on Pickering's side. We'll find out. So, for at least briefly. So, let's get into the reading. Click on here. Hopefully, yeah, good. All right. So, this is right at the yellow highlighted part. I think she was cutting herself by accident. Luckily, it wasn't as deep as the first time she had to cut. Em reached around and used her left hand to push the chair against her back again, relieving that horrible digging pressure. There was a filthy angle, all wrong for her arm, but she continued to press the chair to her while she shuffled around, so she was once more facing the stove. Then she leaned back, using the center island to relieve the pressure, gasping for breath, crying again. She wasn't aware of the tears. She leaned forward and began to saw through the tape binding her ankles. Her exertions had loosened these bands and the others binding her lower body to the blanking chair. Consequently, the work went faster and she cut herself less frequently. Top of the next column. Although she managed to give herself a fairly good slash on the right calf, as if some mad part of her were trying to punish it for seizing up while she was trying to push the chair free of the floor. So a little battle there with her body, since it was like that was the part that was like threatening the Charlie horse there for her. So she did cut the calf. It's almost like that's a character too, part of her body. She cut it. The next part here, just want to make sure my face wasn't all over the screen. She was working, right here, she was working on the tape holding her knees. The last one's left when she heard the front door open and close. I'm home, honey, Pickering called cheerfully. Miss me? There will be quite a bit of swearing here coming up, so I will skip over that part on the next page and the next couple of pages. You can imagine both of them are going to be pretty upset at each other, and he's going to be surprised at what he sees. M froze. Try to picture this in your mind. Bent over with her hair hanging in her face, and it took every last scrap of will to get it moving again. No time for a finesse now. She jammed the blade of the butcher knife under the belt of gray tape binding her right knee, miraculously avoided stabbing the tip into her own kneecap, and hauled upward with all her strength. In the hall, there was a heavy clunk sound. That's not good. And she knew he had just turned a key in a lock, a big lock, from the sound. Pickering wanted no interruptions, probably thought there had been interruptions enough for one day. He started up the hall. He must have been wearing sneakers. She hadn't noticed them before because she could hear them squelching. All right, a little bit of onomatopoeia there. Good stuff. I will try not to stop too much because, let's just keep going. I'll try not to be an English teacher here and just read. He was whistling Oh Susanna. Very old tune. It's like, I think it's that one. The tape holding her right knee parted bottom to top, and the chair fell backward against the counter with a noisy clatter. Top of the next column. Now bound to her only at the left knee. For a moment, the footsteps beyond the swing door, very close now, stopped, and they broke into a run. After that, it all happened very, very fast. Oh my gosh. I do need to stop there. Didn't she mention this before? We're not going to look back, but I thought she said something similar to this when she was talking about Amy's death. I could be wrong, but I thought she said it all happened very fast. He hit the door two-handed, and it burst open with a loud thump. Those hands were still outstretched as he came racing into the kitchen. They were empty, no sign of the tire iron she imagined. The sleeves of the yellow slicker were pulled up halfway to his arms, and M had time to think, that's too small for you. Blank. A wife would tell you, but you don't have a wife, do you? The hood of the slicker was pushed back. His power haircut was finally in disarray. Mild disarray, he was too short for anything else. And the rainwater dripped down the sides of his face and into his eyes. He took in the situation at a glance, seemed to understand everything. "Oh, you annoying blank," he bellowed, and ran around the counter to grab her. She stabbed out with the butcher knife. The blade shot between the first and second fingers of his splayed right hand and saw deep into the flesh at the bottom of the V. Blood poured down. Pickering screamed in pain and surprise. Mostly surprise, she thought. Hyenas don't expect their victims to turn on the... He reached out with his left hand, grabbed her wrist, top of the next column, twisted it. Something creaked or maybe snapped. Either way, pain bolted up her arm as bright as light. She tried to hold out on to the knife, but there was no chance. It went flying all the way across the room, and when he let go of her wrist, her right hand flopped, fingers splayed. He bored in on her, and M pushed him backward, using both hands and ignoring the fresh scream of pain from her strained wrist. It was instinct only. Her rational mind would have told her that a push wasn't going to stop this guy, but her rational mind was now cringing in the corner of her head, able to do nothing but hope for the best. He outweighed her, but her bottom was pressed against the chipped lip of the center island. He went staggering backward with a look of startlement that would have been comical in other circumstances and came down on either one ice cube or a bunch of them. For a moment, he looked like a cartoon character, Roadrunner perhaps, sprinting in place in an effort to stay on his feet. Then he stepped on more ice cubes. She saw them go spinning and glinting across the floor, went down hard, and wrapped the back of his head against his newly dented refrigerator. He held up his bleeding hand and looked at it. Then he looked at her. "You cut me." Top of the next column. "You blank, you dumb blank. Look at this, you cut me. Why'd you cut me?" He tried to scramble to his feet, but more ice cubes went zipping out from beneath him, and he thumped down again. He pivoted on one knee, meaning to rise that way, and for a moment, his back was to her. M seized the chair's broken left arm from the center island. Ragged strands of duct tape still dangled from it. Pickering got to his feet and turned towards her. M was waiting. She brought the arm down on his forehead using both hands. Her right one didn't want to close, but she made it. Some avatistic. So this is not a word that I know, but it seems like something goes way back into the old part of your brain. Doesn't matter. Survival-oriented part of her even remembered to choke up on the red maple rod, knowing it would maximize the force. Maximum force was good. It was a chair arm, after all, not a baseball bat. All right, really quickly here. Choking up, you might know that. Any baseball players, softball players, choking up on the bat probably gives you a little bit more force. There's a fine line between choking up too much and you don't get that amount of force, but maybe she played softball or baseball in her past. We're gonna go back to a couple stories from her childhood a little later on, but let's get back to this. Just some part of her brain just knew, like, man, I need to choke up on this to try to get as much. And remember, she might have a broken wrist or something. He twisted her wrist pretty good there. So didn't get as much force as she probably wanted, but we'll see how effective that was. Right here, there was a thump. It wasn't as loud as the swing door had been when he hit it coming in, but it still sounded loud enough, perhaps because the rain had slackened even more. For a moment, nothing else happened, and then blood began to run out of his power haircut and over his forehead. She stared at him, into his eyes. He stared back with dazed incomprehension. "Don't," he said feebly, and reached out one hand to take the chair arm from her. "Yes," she said, and swung again, this time from the side, a slicing two-handed blow. Her right hand giving up and letting go at the last moment, her left one holding firm. At the end of the arm, ragged where it had been broken, splinters sticking out, hammered into Pickering's right temple. This time the blood burst at once as his head snapped to the side, all the way to his left shoulder. Bright drops ran down his cheek and pattered onto the gray tile. "Stop," he said thickly, pawing at the air with one hand. He looked like a drowning man begging for rescue. "No," she said, and brought the arm down on his head again. Pickering screamed and staggered away from her in a head-tucked hunch, trying to put the center island between them. He stepped on more ice cubes and skidded, but this time managed to stay upright. Only by luck, she had to believe, since he had to be all but out on his feet. For a moment, she almost let him go, thinking he would run out through the swing door. It was what she would have done. Then her dad spoke up, very calmly in her head. "He's after the knife, sweetie." "No," she said, snarling it this time. "No, you won't." She tried to run around the other side of the island and head him off, but she couldn't run, not while she was dragging the shattered remains of the chair behind her like a ball and blanking chain. Top of the next column. It was still duct taped to her left knee. It banged against the island, slammed her in the butt, tried to get between her legs and trip her. The chair seemed to be on his side, and she was glad she'd broken it. Pickering got to the knife. It was lying against the bottom of the swing door and fell on it like a football tackle covering a loose ball. He was making a guttural wheezing sound deep in his throat. Em reached him just as he started to turn over. She hammered him with the chair arm again and again, shrieking, aware in some part of her mind that it wasn't heavy enough and she wasn't generating anywhere near the amount of force she wanted to generate. She could see her right wrist, already puffing up, trying to address the outrage perpetrated on it, just as if it expected to survive this day. Pickering collapsed on the knife and lay still. She backed away a little, gasping for breath, those little white comets once more flying across her field of vision. Min spoke in her mind. This was not uncommon with her, and not always unwelcome. Sometimes, but not always. "Henry, get that damn knife and put it right between his shoulder blades." "Rusty, no, honey, don't go close to him. That's what he expects. He's playing possum." "Oh, the back of his neck, that's good too. His stinking neck." Top of the next column. "Rusty, reaching under him would be like sticking your hand into a hay baler. Emmy, you've got two choices. Beat him to death," Henry sounding reluctant but convinced, "or run." Well, maybe, and maybe not. There was a drawer on the side of the island. She yanked it open, hoping for another knife. Lots of them. Carving knives, filleting knives, steak knives, serrated bread knives. She would settle for a blank butter knife. What she saw was mostly an array of fancy black plastic cooking tools, a pair of spatulas, a ladle, and one of those big serving spoons full of holes. I think it's called a slotted spoon, by the way, but not important. Yeah, you wouldn't use that for soup, but there were some other bric-a-brac, but the most dangerous looking thing her eye fell on was a potato peeler. "Listen to me," she said. Her voice was hoarse, almost guttural. That might be the second time Stephen King has used guttural. Her throat was dry. "I don't want to kill you, but I will if you make me. I got a meat fork here. If you try to turn over, I'll stick it in the back of your neck and keep pushing until it comes out the front." Did he believe her? That was one question. She was sure he had removed all the knives except for the one underneath him on purpose. But could he be sure he had gotten all the other sharp objects? Most men had no idea what was in the drawers of their kitchens. Top of the next column. She knew this from life with Henry. Before Henry, from life with her father. But Pickering wasn't most men, and this wasn't most kitchens. She had an idea it was more of an operating theater. Still, given how dazed he was he dazed? And how he must surely believe that a lapse of memory could get him killed, she thought the bluff might run. Only there was another question. Was he even hearing her or understanding her? If he did, bluff couldn't work if the person you were trying to bluff didn't understand the stakes. So maybe he passed out. But she wasn't going to stand here debating. That would be the worst thing she could do. She bent over, never taking her eyes from Pickering, and hooked her fingers under the last band of tape, still binding her to the chair. The fingers of her right hand wanted even less to work now, but she made them, and her sweat drenched skin helped. She shoved downward, and the tape started coming free with another ill tempered ripping sound. She supposed it hurt. It left a bright red band across her kneecap. For some reason, the word Jupiter floated randomly through her mind. But she was far past feeling such things. It let go all at once and slid down to her ankle, wrinkled and twisted and sticking to itself. She shook it off her foot and sidled backward, free. Her head was pounding, either from exertion, top of the next column, or from where he had hit her while she was looking at the dead girl in the trunk of the Mercedes. Nicole, she said. Her name was Nicole. Naming the dead girl seemed to bring Em back to herself a little. Now the idea of trying to get the butcher knife out from under him seemed like madness. The part of herself that sometimes talked in her father's voice was right. Just staying in the same room with Pickering was pressing her luck, which left leaving. Only that. I'm going now, she said. Do you hear me? He didn't move. I've got the meat fork. If you come after me, I'll stab you with it. I'll poke your eyes out. What you want to do is stay right where you are. Have you got that? Em didn't move. Em backed away from him, then turned and left the kitchen by the door on the other side of the room. She was still holding the bloody chair arm. All right, the next part here, part 8, there was a photograph on the wall by the bed. I think that's probably a good place for us to stop. Yeah. So one problem she has is, she doesn't actually know how to get out. Pickering moved some kind of big lock on the front door. I mean, maybe, because when she got in the house, she was like unconscious. She doesn't know the layout of the house very well. So, and I don't like what it said there. Something about the bedroom. I'm thinking you don't want to be in any bedroom in that house. You want to get out the front door as quickly as possible, if you can. Maybe he has it so she can't get out. And if that's the case, and if that kitchen is more like an operating theater, like if he tortures people there, the house is designed to keep her inside. So, hopefully nobody in here, none of us ever experienced something as bad as Em is experiencing now. All right, that's it for today with the reading. Hope you enjoyed it.